And we are live. Good morning, Michelle.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Karen.
everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you are in, for those of you who have come to join us or are watching the replay. Today, I have the very special Michelle Sleight. Michelle is not only a business owner, entrepreneur, colleague, she's a friend. We met when one of the first meetings with our networking group, and we've developed that friendship throughout.
Yeah.
And Michelle and I have also done some of our further training together. We both did our practitioner training in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. And then we both went on and spent 2 full weeks of intensive study for our master practitioner certifications in those. So we're both master practitioners in hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, and NLP. And Michelle is also has an amazing business with her little dogs. She breeds them, she sells them, she has other people who look after them and breed them. So let me introduce you to the wonderful Michelle Sleight. Michelle, can you say hello to everyone and then
Hello, everyone.
explain a bit about your journey, or how far back you want to go, what you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so thank you, Karen. That was an amazing introduction, and thanks to be here and have this chat with you all. So I actually am a coach in trauma, and I'm also a trainer. I'll get back to that though. And yes, I do have a very successful international business breeding the world famous Coton de Tulle. And you'll go, what's that? So you can Google it. Yeah. And my breeder's prefix, where you'll find me, is Cotton Run, COTONRUN. You can also check it out on Facebook and here on LinkedIn. So my journey began a very, very long time ago when I was able to get to a point that I was completely free of my triggers and able to resolve an issue very, very quickly and easily. And it took some work to get to that point where I had that skill set, a lot of research and study. But I got to that point, and someone said to me, why don't you go and help other people with that? I also have another skill set that's quite unique and specific that I use, because a lot of people who have experienced trauma do not want to talk about it or go back there. So I have something that I do myself that means that we don't have to do that. But I began working in a sort of like therapy coach type role way back before coaches existed, in very, very early 1990s, out of a little crystal shop. And I got so busy that I ended up having to run it from my front room. Yeah, and whilst I haven't been totally, flat out doing that, I've had children, we've lived overseas, a whole range of things. I have always helped people who have crossed my path. So it's not something that I ever stopped doing. I just wasn't as visible, perhaps, as what I had been early on. So then in returning to Australia, my husband works away. I had children, and we had this beautiful little dog, and everyone wanted to buy my dog. And I'm not selling my dog. A lot of people who grew up overseas, especially in Europe, had grown up with the Coton de Tulle. And so, they're like, where did you get it? I want one. I've been looking. And so then I thought, well, maybe I could become a breeder, because I grew up on a farm and, helped deliver lots of different animals in my young life.
Oh, wow.
To do anything, I think to do anything and to do it how you want to do it, it takes sitting down and thinking, how do I want to do this? What do I want this to look like, right? And for me, right back in the early time when I started coaching, it was all about results. Always 100% focus on accountability and results. And so I brought that into my dog breeding. So it was all about being ethical and giving 150% to these little beings, these little babies. So I had to learn midwifery. I had to learn all sorts of different philosophies and different approaches out there. I studied with a number of different organizations, Delta Dog. I settled on puppy culture because I really love the program. I love the results, and I love the science that goes behind it, because it's really a lot of the science that I used when I was pregnant, and the work that I do with the puppies when my children were little. So I really loved that. But it was very important to decide, what is this going to look like? Because when I'm talking to people, Karen, some people will say to me, "Oh, gee, that's expensive."
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, so I'm not for everybody.
Yes.
If you want your puppy to have a beautiful start to life and be a happy, well-socialized, developmentally sound puppy, then I'm your breeder. If you don't want that, then I'm not. Right? And so and that's fine. I can't be something for everybody, but I can be someone who is an ethical breeder for those people who that is important to. And as a result, I now have this international reputation. Somebody did try to steal it, but my darling families that have bought puppies from me, they look after me. They are so committed to making sure, that I'm okay, that they let me know, and they put in complaints. This is not Michelle. So I'm well looked after by my clients, by my customers. So that's really beautiful. And a lot of them have come back and got a second puppy.
Wow.
So my puppies go to Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, all around Australia and New Zealand. And one little girl would be going to Hungary as part of a conservation project to look to the future with Coton de Chileas. They were always a prized breed. So the Madagascar, because they originated in Madagascar, didn't let them out. And so we have very limited breeding lines. So looking to the future, looking ahead to what's this going to look like in the future, it's all about preserving those lines. So I'm working in that area. And I stepped back up into this role of working with people who are wanting perhaps a different life, different outcome from the experiences that they live, right? So I always say there is nothing wrong with us. Someone made a decision that was outside of our control. Something happened, and we want to be able to move forward without that destroying us. And so I stepped back into that field to do that work. However, I have taught my children, and they have shut things down. They have been able to help their friends. I have worked with other people, and they have been able to stop people like I have in their tracks when they were about to be hurt. They were able to stop that person from hurting them. And so when you think about that, that's very, very, very powerful. So I went off and I thought, I'm going to go and get my training and assessors certificate. And I'm going to step into a training role rather than just a therapy role. Because for me to be authentic to myself, again, that question, what do I want this to look like? How do I actually want to be able to help people? How can I best help people?
I can hear your dogs.
That's where it's important, right? It's like I'm in this space way over here, and they're in a space here. I can have conversations that a lot of people are looking for what I can help them with might not necessarily be able to have that type of conversation. So it's about, how can I help them? What is that going to look like? And so I went off and I did my official trainers, an assessor's certificate. Very interesting. Big challenge. And I have been now able to put that program into something where people can, they can, whether or not it's mapped across to the unit of competency in the diploma of business under communication, led communication, because it's all about communication. It's all about having the skills and the resources, the internal ones and the external ones, to be able to step up and to be able to represent ourselves and to get really good outcomes. It's all about communication. And so I've mapped that across. And so it's an area where I work in psychosocial hazards. And you did some training with me, Karen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I was just going to ask you. If people had got confused from your transition from your dogs to this, we are talking now about your work to do with psychosocial hazards, which includes things like bullying, harassment, and then further more serious hazards like, yes. Actually, Michelle, I was just going to say to you, have you got your LinkedIn switched off on your computer? Because they suggest we don't have it on at the same time as the StreamYard. That open,
Yep, it's off. Yep.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
So if people didn't quite get the transition, Michelle has gone from her dogs into this current business, which she has you've been doing it for a long time, haven't you, Michelle? And like you
I have, and
ways.
Yes, I sort of stepped out from it. So I stepped in. I was working in that area, and then for a number of reasons, I stepped back. I went to university. I did my degree, and then I got married. I had children. We lived overseas and different things like that. But like I said, I always someone crossed my path who needed help. I always gave it because I have that skill to be able to do that. So I always did. Yeah. So so then I got to a point where two major things really happened. The first being that my daughter was on a train when she was in grade 10, and someone from her school it was a student, a grade 10 student, just brushed her arm. And she turned around and she shut him down. She told him, "You disgust me. Get away from me. Don't ever do that again. You're revolting." And he said to her, "You're the first person who's ever actually known what it is I'm really doing." Now, fast forward a few weeks, and she's sitting having lunch at school in school break. And she catches him assaulting her friend. And she sent him running. And her friend got very, very distressed. And she said, "What's wrong?" And he said to her, "He's been doing that to me for several months, and I haven't been able to stop him. But you just did. And what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I do that?" And and this was very profound for me. She said to him, "There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that I've been taught and you haven't. I've been trained and you haven't been trained." And I just thought, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
That's significant. And it's significant.
It is very, very significant that she actually knew she'd been trained.
Yeah, of course.
It was really interesting, right? Really, really interesting.
Not really. You're her mother.
But it was interesting that she realized and she saw the difference and was able to understand that. And the other thing that really struck me was, and I talk about this in my book, there was a 17-year-old girl that was on, online and had a bit of a following, and like me had been harmed in her at the age, of 5 and again in her primary years. And she petitioned the court overseas to end her life because she could find no solution. And all the professionals agreed that they had tried to help her, but they couldn't.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I just find that to be extraordinarily unacceptable because I have been assaulted so many times and had other things. And I'm not in a space, I'm out of that space, right? I'm not in that place where she was struggling to get out of. And I sort of think I'm not the only person out there who can be helping people like her, but I certainly could have. And there's definitely a big problem because the professionals are not manning up to the fact that if they can't help someone, there's no accountability. And if they can't help somebody, then, hey, it's
Nobody
okay
can. Yeah.
if they can't live anymore. Yeah, nobody can, but we can. And I just found that to be totally unacceptable. And I mean, I was already helping people that crossed my path, so I thought I'm going to step up in a more official capacity and start talking more about this because really it has to change. We just can't have our children just being damaged all the time when there's options, right? So I can help with that. So that is why I kind of officially stepped up and have been looking to start a new business where I can now train, not just work as a therapist, but to actually train people so that if something crosses your path, that it's not going to affect you in the
It's not going
way
to go any
that
further.
it will historically have affected you. So you can be like my daughter.
Yeah.
And you can shut it down, right? Whatever it is, bullying, harassment,
Yes.
anything
Sexual assault,
where it's
whatever.
unwanted and uninvited. Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah.
and on that point, Michelle, that's the thing where I think, your daughter's example is great, and especially her friend who obviously there was more than just like a brush of the arm or whatever with that there was with your daughter. And so she instinctively felt uncomfortable. She didn't like it. She didn't want it. She wasn't encouraging it, anything like that. And I think it's really important to point out that our instincts tell us, and yet we're not taught to listen to how we feel when somebody might be near us too close. And that's the start. They might start coming too close, then they might put their arm around you and say something, and it's all part of their grooming, or you call it their grooming, that leads up.
Bullying. Yep. Can be the same. I've just finished working with someone who was very badly bullied at work and is now gone back to work, and now the bully is feeling uncomfortable.
Oh, yes. So, it's important to realize that there's lots of that going on. We all know when it's not right. We have instincts and we have that feeling. So if you have that gut feeling, listen to it. And then it happens a lot in the workplace.
We have to break that down a bit more, Karen, as you and I both know. It's not simply that you're not okay with something, because I've spoken to a lot of people, and I myself wasn't okay with what was happening. But until I actually figured it all out and got all the internal things that I was born with working correctly with a strategy to be able to put these things into a sequence of action taking to give me a best possible outcome, then it's not achievable to get it. So there are steps to being able to do that. So like when I found myself trapped in this toilet at an expat party overseas by a fellow expat, a male, who was there to do me harm and made that very clear. I can remember it was like slow motion, but it happened in the blink of an eye. The process that I had set up the strategy with all the internal resources following along, I felt it all happening step by step. I was very aware of it. I felt the plan being formed, and then what I said to him stopped him. He couldn't touch me. He just couldn't touch me. This lady I've just been working with took up a few nights to help somebody out in a hospitality role where there was a known bully. And when this person started bullying her, she just went, and the bully stopped.
Yes. Yes, you're so right, Michelle.
So you have to know, we're not taught
No.
these tools. We don't develop a toolbox to deal with all of this stuff. We also don't develop a language to communicate. So part of my job, it's part of what I'm trying to do, is set up conversations where people they can learn language to be able to have conversation.
So, Michelle, that's amazing. And, you know, I've watched you through the years. I've watched you through the years with your dogs as well. I want to go back to your dogs for a second, because you said you lived on a farm, and just point out to people, if they don't already know, that was in New Zealand. And Michelle, of course, we're both Kiwis. And so that I was always like, how can you be such an amazing midwife and things like that? And now I understand more when you say, well, you experienced a lot of that as normal when you were growing up on a farm. And so you probably delivered.
Yes, but I did go and do a midwifery course. I did a lot of study, and I think that's the thing. I got myself to a point where I believed in myself that I was ready, right? To make sure that I was ready. Yeah, and it's all about accountability to self. Yeah.
So I've watched you, and I've seen the way that you look after those dogs when you've got puppies, and how immaculate you keep the areas, and you use special products to make sure they don't get any of these bugs what do you call them, Michelle?
Parvovirus.
Viruses. And you're such a dedicated mum to your dogs. So my hat off to you. That's one business that you still run, and you have run all the way through the other work that you're talking about. And so you truly, and such a successful business, like you say. So you truly are an entrepreneur, and this is what this series is about. So I want to sort of interrupt a little bit and say, okay, well, you've already said, I think you've already answered one of my questions, is what do you believe is the most important thing in business for you? And I think you've said, for you, it's being fully prepared, knowing that you're absolutely 100% capable of doing whatever it is you've taken on to do. You've done all your training, you've done all the research, you've brought yourself to a point where you have absolute confidence and belief in yourself. Would that be right? Yeah.
Yes, and also that I asked myself, how do I want this to look?
Yes.
Like what is it I actually really want to achieve long term?
Which is the outcome. It's like, well, I talk about it all the time. You've got to have that clear, defined, detailed picture of how you want it to be, how you want it to look, because we see things in pictures. We think in pictures, how you want this life of yours to look, or this part of your life to look, which is number 101 with coaching and mindset. And then and then you prepare yourself to make sure that you're fully capable and fully confident and fully trained, and you have all the expertise that you think is required to fulfill that picture. And so that's amazing. And so
I think too, though, you've got to have the flexibility. You've got to be prepared, because life will throw things at you.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been in the boot of my car on the phone to the vet,
delivering.
My husband's driving. My daughter is leaning over the back seat, and she's resuscitating the head of the puppy while I'm digging the puppy out of the mummy. on the way to the vet.
Wow.
And we're counting the and I'm not the only breeder who has had to do these things.
Yeah.
It
That's
is
amazing, Michelle.
it is I mean, it's life and death.
And you just take
And
it
you've
all in
got to
your stride.
you've got to be you've got to stay focused. Yeah, you really do. You really do. It is a huge commitment, but then any business is a huge commitment. I have a responsibility to the puppies. I have a responsibility to the mummy. I have a responsibility to the people that are trusting me to breed and to raise a special family member for them. You know, there's
Yes,
a
and
lot of
as you say, they're not just a puppy.
responsibility.
They're not just
Yeah.
these, like our puppies are
No,
not
they
just
become family.
a family member. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, so another question I've got for you, because we're nearly out of time. If
Yeah.
you were giving mentoring to a new budding entrepreneur, given your vast experience and knowledge for over how many years, Michelle?
Oh,
20
yeah. Yeah.
or 30
Yeah.
years?
Yeah. Since the
What would
90s.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say
My
to
my
them? What would be your secret formula in a
okay, so
nutshell?
I would say that you're going to make mistakes along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make mistakes with relationships, or you're just going to make mistakes. There's going to be
Mm-hmm.
things and you think, oh no. But that's okay because you learn from it and you move on. I always say to myself, okay, what is it that I can take from this that is going to help me to be better?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how can I use this? So always give yourself permission to not get it perfect straight away. It may need some adjusting. You may need some adjusting. Stepping back in, I have this formidable vocabulary around trauma that not even counselors that counsel trauma victims have. So I have to learn how to find a neutral language and start training other people into that language. So there may be some adjustments within you that 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 you need to make. So my main advice is just be prepared that it's going to be not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, really. And it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to fall down. If you're really clear about how you want it to look and if you're really committed to it, then
Exactly.
you will get up and dust yourself off. Yeah. So don't forget to laugh. When you want to cry, don't forget to laugh.
You're so right. And I love that, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's so true. Is that nothing
This
is
is one of
perfect.
those times.
And you have got the most amazing laugh too. So whenever I hear it in a room, I'm like, oh my God, Michelle's laughing. Yeah, so you're so right. Is that you have the outcome, the picture, the intention of the outcome. And there are always going to be challenges
Always.
and obstacles
Always.
that come up, and you're learning from that and how you
Always.
respond to it, not react, learning to respond and go forward and learn whatever they've been given to you to learn is such an important gift, actually. And you're so right. So thank
I
you for
think so.
pointing it
Yeah.
out. And knowing that actually it's not that, it's the journey that is the gift of everything. It's not like it's a bit like they say, when you retire you've got the golden years. Well, sorry, that's not the golden years. A lot of people don't even make it to that, or if they make it,
Exactly.
well,
The golden years of the journey. When I was going through the period, so I had a moment where I was in tears and I was like, I don't want this. I don't want this to keep happening, and I heard this tiny voice and it said, well, what do you want? And I had to stop and I had to think. For the first time, I realized that I never focused on what I wanted. And once I actually realized what I wanted, I'd been doing all this research and reading to try and, free myself of all these triggers and to have a life that I felt I had some control over and all of that. but knowing what I wanted was like the first step. And then I began a journey. And like you're saying, Karen, that led me to meeting someone on the same journey for a different reason. And that led to this most extraordinary experience where I could say, okay, I don't like this. I could do some work, go to sleep, wake up, and I experienced everything differently. To me, that's extraordinary. That's the journey. The magic is in the journey. The magic is there in every journey that you take. People say to me when I work with them, you saved my life. And I say, you saved your own life because you chose to come and work with me.
And you listened,
and
you learned, and you did the
and
work.
and for me, that's the journey. That's part of the journey. That gives meaning to life. Yeah, so you're right. The journey is the actual doing it.
Everything, the good and the bad, the challenges and the
Yeah,
wins. That's why we always talk about that on our women's networking group. What are your challenges?
Totally.
What are your wins? So last question, Michelle, because we're out of time, but we'll go over a little because I love talking with you. Is what is or what was your biggest challenge when you said, you were doing all these things and it wasn't quite working? What was it that was challenging you the most until you've done a little bit of a diverse, U-turn or whatever and changed track a bit? So what were your biggest challenges before you did that?
So for my business, it was finding ethical people to work with. Believe it or not, it's really, really hard in the dog world. There's a lot of them, but that was a bit of a challenge for me and a learning curve for me to really be able to understand what the opposite of what I'm trying to do looks like. It was a huge challenge and was quite distressing because I hate to think that animals are suffering. And so that was difficult in that. And in terms of this coming back into this field of therapy and everything, one of my biggest challenges is that I wear really two hats. I wear the hat of the therapist, but I also wear the hat of the victim because I am a victim of multiple things, and I find it very challenging that we are teaching people like me to be disempowered rather than empowered. We are teaching people like me to weaponize our trauma. And that there's no accountability. So for me, it's a challenge when I'm talking to someone who's about ready to commit suicide because they've been through hell, that that it's like that, and that there's no accountability, and that is very sad. And of course, we know sadness equates to something must change. So then that motivates me. But it is a challenge for me. I don't get triggered about talking about my own stuff or anything like that, but I do feel for people who are stuck in a system that is not about helping them. Yeah, that's a big challenge for me.
And you're doing a lot towards changing that, Michelle.
Yes, that's quite right.
Yes. And like I say, your switch now to be a trainer in the corporate world, to speak to employees and people about some of these things we've discussed today with regard to psychosocial hazards in a different way is amazing. And I'm sure that it'll have a huge impact for you when you get out there more and are speaking more with people, whether they're employees or entrepreneurs or whatever group you speak in front of. You really are doing wonderful work and making a huge difference. So yes, I did do your course and it was amazing. And I highly recommend it. I highly recommend people approach you about it. So in closing, Michelle, how can people reach out to you, find out more about your trainings and your programs and your course, any podcasts that you're doing or any speaking, if they want to bring you into their community or their company or business, how can they do that? How can
they can reach out to me here on LinkedIn.
Great.
Yep. They can also email me at info@michelleinsight.com.au. They can Facebook me. I'm on Facebook. They can reach out on Facebook and message me there.
Great.
Yes.
And with your dogs, you mentioned your
yes.
Instagram page, didn't you? What is it again?
It's Cotton Run, COTONRUN. Yes.
Which is easy to remember and easy to find.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram. My website is cottonrun.com.au. So they can go on there. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. Really,
we have been
Thanks,
waiting Karen.
to do. Yeah, we've been waiting to do this for a long time. As you know, I've been doing these entrepreneurs nuggets for a couple of years. However, I had a big break in between. So I'm doing one a month approximately again. So it's wonderful to have you this month as our guest and as our trainer and as our teacher and as our person who's given us so many great insights and gold nuggets today.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. And have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much for joining. There's a couple of messages. Wonderful live stream, Karen Clark and Michelle Sleight, but it doesn't say who it is. So we do have people watching, even though.
Well, hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
It's great. Goodbye, everyone. We're going to go.
Yes, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'll see you in the back of the studio.
Yep.
Bye.